Hi, this is Ed again in San Diego, and welcome back to Global TV Talk Show. This is a unit of globalbusinessnews.net, as many of you already know. I am really honored to have the law firm Mayer Brown, represented by Elizabeth Liz Stern, who's senior counsel. And senior counsel, I'm going to have to ask, what does that mean? She's an advisor, I know, to key clients, corporate clients, regarding immigration and compliance matters and corporate policy developments. Liz Stern, welcome.
Thank you, Ed. It's delightful to be here. So at Mayer Brown, when we decide that we are going to continue offering our services to the law firm and the law firm wishes us to, they invite us to take on a senior counsel role. And in that role, we are available to help both the firm with continued leadership and innovation and to help clients in our area of expertise. I am the founder of the immigration practice at Mayer Brown, a large, globally prominent law firm. And I also am the last head of the Washington office of Mayer Brown. I stepped down as managing partner in the middle of 2024. So in my senior counsel role, I have the privilege of opining on major immigration issues, handling matters for many of our key clients, continuing to work with the sterling team that leads not only the immigration, but the regulatory practices at Mayer Brown, and also advising the firm on its continued trajectory.
So thank you for that wonderful explanation. It's so easy to follow and comprehend, even for me. I'm not an attorney. So I want to introduce a good friend and member of the Global Press Club, is Ken Lloyd. Dr. Ken Lloyd had a PhD in organizational development and something else. Please go deeper.
Yeah, thanks a million. It's so nice to be here, and certainly nice to meet you, Liz. And I've heard of your firm with all in the most positive context as one of the top law firms in the U.S. And that's just, you've had such a wonderful career with them. It's just great to hear that, and it's still going on, which is terrific. Yeah, my background is in org development. I had gone from way back as an undergrad to Berkeley, and then UCLA for master's and the PhD. Went into consulting and ultimately had my own consulting practice, working with employees on basically any areas related to employee growth and development, training, organization structure or design, and when in doubt, call the counsel. And never, ever, ever would play attorney, because attorneys really need to do that. And I had joined a client firm, stayed with them for 18 years. They're a major manufacturer of medical apparel. And now I'm back on my own consulting. I've written a lot of books, business books. Most recent is a dummies book. It's an update, a new edition of the book I did for them 15 years ago called Performance Appraisals and Phrases for Dummies. Great work with it, Wiley, and really enjoy the whole process. So the consulting continues. I do a good amount of executive coaching these days and basic guidance. Oh, thank you, Ed. Right on cue.
Mr. TV guy here. So.
I'm so when I read about what you'll be speaking about, Liz, I thought, oh my goodness, that's such an important topic. We know how much the U.S. workforce is changing, all these dramatic shifts in it, and approaching it from the standpoint of the need for high-level, highly skilled, technically skilled immigrants is critical in so many arenas. I'm just looking forward to hearing your insights and thoughts on that. So along with Ed, thank you for sharing this with us.
It's my pleasure.
I'm delighted to meet you as well. It sounds like we have some synergies, no question.
Oh, no question. I know I've gotten to know Ken really well the past year or so. So the theme here today, this is legal TV talk. That's our branding for what's going to become a monthly TV series, welcoming legal minds to come and discuss, and of course a panel if possible. So this broadcast today is going to focus in on critical changes going on right now. The nature of immigrant talent in the intelligent age. Now, that is really a smart portrayal in a nutshell. Liz Stern, please take us on a deep dive here.
Well, I have to tell you, first of all, that I don't get credit for the theme itself because this was part of the discussion at the World Economic Forum in Davos this year, collaboration in the intelligent age. And I was invited to author an article for a new publication in Davos, the Summit Observer, addressing how mobility assists this collaboration in the intelligent age, because of course, the movement of talent to where the need is more potent is essential to achieve advances in a time where we don't really know what the game will be. We're not even sometimes sure of the playing field, in that intelligence is now becoming something that is to some extent machine driven, but to a large extent still designed in the imagination of very, very talented humans with expertise across the sciences, mathematics, technology, engineering, and more.
So we shouldn't be afraid of AI and law firms?
Oh, I I
I'm
believed in
sorry, I had to
industrial
ask.
revolution and I believe in AI. I think you move with the times and we take advantage of it. But I think that like anything else, I think AI is connected to the human architects of the AI, and its potential will be um, uh, reliable with the help of that human architect and many human architects.
All right. Ken, do you have a comment before we move on?
It's interesting from the standpoint of performance appraisals, using AI. On the one side, it can help as kind of a coach for a manager, but the appraisal itself really needs to come from a human, from the manager. It is written differently if it's strictly AI written. And frankly, on the receiving side, employees know, and they sense I'm being evaluated by AI instead of by my manager, instead of a human touch on this. So it can be helpful as a tool, as a coach, as a resource. But I agree completely with what Liz is saying. It's that human imagination and creativity and all of that basic, deep human aspect that is critical to making the function work. And it cuts across so many areas. And AI can be a great support, a great tool. And in so many areas, it already is. But it's not just, oh, turn it over to AI and I'm done. Yeah, you'll be done all right, but not in the way you want to be done.
Liz, I was fortunate to be hosted by you and the firm last February 1 in a live meeting. And one of our keynote, that was a great meeting, by the way, and thank you. But one of our keynoters was Rebecca Peters, who at the time, and in fact, I think she still is, with Samsung Electronics US as Director of Public Policy Semiconductors. And Samsung, of course, is a huge investor because of the Chip Science Act. And that's what Rebecca keynoted about. So the immigration talent, the people are needed to run these new high-grade chip manufacturing facilities that are right now being constructed across the U.S., particularly out here in the West with Phoenix area and the Taiwan company and Intel and some others, as well as in Texas and somewhere else. So all this talent that wants to come and work isn't, not enough of it is here right now. Is that correct?
That's correct. First of all, I'll just mention, I thought Rebecca's presentation was excellent, and I was in a meeting with her just this past Friday.
Oh,
So
good.
just a couple of days ago. And she is very focused on ensuring that the visa programs for the United States for top talent remain very fluid and agile, because the need is higher than ever before. And the reasons for that, I think, and I've heard her and many, many others express it particularly in the technology and infrastructure arena, the complexity of the problem solving, the marshaling of the power of how you derive the data and spot the patterns and then run different computations. And I think algorithm is an outdated word. My hunch is there are different words now, but to really create these real capabilities and start to scan the horizon and move towards greater speed, but with total reliability in any kind of manufacturing of complex systems, you've got to have top talent. In the US, we have three significant barriers to having that talent. The first barrier is just pure demographics. We simply are not populating ourselves the way that we used to. There just aren't enough of us to fill these slots. The second reason, though, is that of the folks that we do have and the wonderful youth that are going into different fields, we have a very small percentage going into the STEM fields. So we are very fortunate with the ones that are going in, but we just don't have enough heading in that particular direction. And the third challenge is that seasoned veterans that we do have are not only aging out, isn't that a terrible term? Not only aging out, but they are opting out. There are people who are leaving the workforce early, who are trying other things. There's just a lot of mobility. To deal with all of that, that means we are missing the continued, if you will, the revenue stream of talent. That's what we're missing right now.
Okay, and so technologically speaking, and this is not political, but it is political.
Right. No,
So
it's a reality, not about politics.
yeah. Does Congress know that there's not sufficient talent in the pipeline to run these new high-tech firms, plants being built right now?
I think that Congress, of course, has some understanding of this, but the problem with the issues as they are presented in Congress is the politics. There is a long-standing debate that has occurred around the immigration arena that includes significant concerns around abuses of the system, and how one defines abuses has been politicized over time. So particular industry uses, particular fraud uses, particular where there are staffing agencies replacing American workers, that is very prominently in the minds of the politicians as these issues are presented to them. It's hard to get past those abuses to really look constructively to what the genuine needs of business are. The solution to that, of course, is the business community itself. The business community itself has to be creative and agile and determined enough to demonstrate what's happening. Having said that, the demographic changes are so significant. If there is a time to catch Congress's attention, it is likely now, where we are really seeing a complete transformation in what the ordinary American talent pool is.
To what extent can machines take over?
Well, remember that my background is international business, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm a STEM expert. But I think that in any sort of evolution and development of industry, there are always tasks that can go to whether it's a machine or it might be, in the old days, we would talk about it being the untrained, the nouveau talent, the first generation of talent that is going into a workplace. Tasks can always become routinized. There is a beautiful Harvard Business School study of the quadrants of development of any sort of, I don't know if you call it an idea or a methodology. It can start out as rocket science that hardly anyone understands. eventually it moves to something that's still complex, but it's not quite that unique. And you really need those gray-haired people to handle it because it's still that. And then eventually it becomes commoditized and eventually it becomes no longer useful. It goes to the fourth quadrant, which is time to move it along and bring the next regenerate. That is just a normal cycle of anything that is developed. And as that happens, you want to move your human brain talent to the next phase. With AI, however, and with machines, I just think that the most potent productivity from machine intelligence, artificial intelligence, whatever we want to call it, is really when it's integrated with the adaptation, the flexibility, the troubleshooting, the direction, the strategy that is brought by great minds, human minds.
Yeah, boy. Ken?
Very interesting. In the summary that I read before today's discussion, there was such an interesting point in there regarding the zero-sum game. And to me, that says so much. We are not only seeing this obvious demographic shift, we need a mindset shift that goes with it to recognize that it's not a zero-sum game. It's not as if every immigrant that comes in is taking the job from an American citizen. That's not what it is. If anything, it's quite the opposite. Bringing in this new talent and brain power is going to enrich the businesses that are going to be operating, and it's going to lead to new businesses being formed, and frankly, more opportunities for US citizens. It's the exact opposite of saying, well, every immigrant comes in, one less job for our people. Simply, that's not what's happening. So we need these, in my opinion, two shifts. Certainly recognize the demographic shift, make a shift in the mindset to recognize that in this globalized world, this is a positive. This is going to enrich the US. It's going to enrich the world. It's going to enrich humanity. That's the reality of it. Reality is a key word here.
Well, you couldn't have made the point more perfectly for us, Ken. I couldn't agree more. And I think that some of the concerns that there are around that zero-sum mindset has to change. But to the extent that one were concerned that really foreign talent is coming in and taking over, that just requires great screening of is this really foreign talent that's really talented? We could be equally worried about young people coming out of college. Well, should the young come in and take jobs? We better hoard those jobs because there's only so many. No, it's not like that. We don't, with innovation and invention and this digital revolution, which even revolution seems too small of a word now, there is an acceleration and constant expansion, and it's now a real multiplier. It's exponential what the expansion is of capabilities. So the job creation it's hard to measure what the limits on the job creation are, but I think the limits are the capabilities that we bring into this pot.
Well, so I'm going to read this. The reality of the supply curve, which expands as more immigrants with talent enter the job zones, they innovate and expand the job pool, which echoes what you were just talking about. So couldn't I'm at a loss for words, but an addendum be attached to a green card that says you have to train 10 people?
Of course. But again, when you do, that reminds me, I'll go to performance reviews, which is Ken's area. Sometimes when you even try to assess this on a 1-for-1, so if there were a provision that says each individual that comes in has to train the next 10, that might not be the highest and best use. You've got to look at how people become groups of talent and develop different. You might need some groups going deep into R&D. They might train people around time, but at the moment, just with everything happening, they need to go into research and development. Whereas you might need others that really have managerial expertise that will excite, inspire, mobilize the work core. And then you might have others that are actually making something, building something. You really have to recognize that one size doesn't fit all in this. But the documentation and the measurement does occur, and there are many studies about the level of innovation that has occurred through immigrants in the US. It's being measured annually by different groups and by other developed economies as well, as you can imagine.
So in your one of your roles that you mentioned is to be a counselor to the corporate community for related affairs, things that require some legal advice or
Yes.
guidance, not just about immigration, but things sort of related to it, a lot of things. Could you take us down that path a little bit about, without naming names, of course, but what kinds of items are under that umbrella?
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, there are many, many different aspects of what the advice that I'm asked to give to businesses. But one part of it currently that might be very relevant to our discussion is they're doing workforce planning. Who do I look to in my recruiting? This is what I desperately need, but what am I looking for? What is more likely to make it through the gate in this interim period before the laws are changed? How do I address it? And in that context, we're helping them to plan to ensure that there is attentiveness paid to what are the measurable characteristics of skill, accomplishment, academics, and experience of the individuals, and how those match and align with what the company's business plan is for the future. And not just what the company's done in the past, but what it's doing for the future. And we're actually suggesting greater transparency, not less, because I think sometimes there's an instinct where the political climate becomes restrictive for employers not to showcase as much, to say less. But in the case of really looking for their talent, the more that they are able to communicate that to the receiving agencies and governmental bodies that are approving visa petitions, the better it is.
So the methodology of sharing, well, thinking, I'm thinking about stakeholders within a corporate structure. How would you approach that? I mean, dealing with the board member or dealing with obviously C-suite, but which C-suite?
Great question. It's an integrated group, particularly when policy is changing this way. So you're ultimately, I find that we are ultimately giving advice that will go to the CEO and will be discussed with the board eventually. But you start really with the chief legal officer, you start with the chief HR officer, and you continue with their teams. HR is critical because they're involved in recruitment, but legal is equally critical because this needs to be done in a way that is going to avoid any kind of disruption and in fact facilitate the business. And then finally, often we're dealing with increasingly the chief operations officer, because it's very important that there be a completely seamless staffing, and otherwise that will be quite disruptive. The final member of the task force we deal with right now is usually the head of government relations, because communicating with the government to say this is working, this doesn't look how we're complying, this in fact is a very pro-America policy because it is enriching American companies to allow American companies to provide what they do. If you are looking at a major, a Fortune leading company in the United States of America, their primary constituents are their American consumers, American employees, and often American investors.
Ken, well, if you can bear with me just for a sec. So you're on K Street. The firm is on K Street, which is ground zero, especially now with a new administration and Susie Wiles or
Yes.
And the revolving door between government and K Street. So this is, I think, a good thing for you.
We think that change moments provide opportunities. It has been decades since the Hill passed comprehensive immigration reform. It stalled
Right.
every single year for, 30 years essentially. And there is an actual opportunity to achieve some things when there is this kind of attentiveness focused on the immigrant issue. And there are lots of immigrant issues to solve. We still have security issues. We still have what happens in the services industry, what happens with the problems that we've all seen, not just in the southern border, but other borders. There are many, many different issues. But this issue of talent is one that it can be handled in an environment of change, where it probably just wouldn't get much traction in an environment that is more static.
So immigration equals migration, but not really, right?
Not if it's not facilitated.
I'm glad we're laughing. Ken?
Well, it's interesting. We know that Gen Y and Gen Z as a group are interested in career development. And that even to the point of in the appraisal process, we're being more forward focused in terms of helping them identify that career path and facilitating their movement on it. So there's a responsibility here, in addition to being more open to the whole concept of increased immigration to help deal with its factors we're talking about, but for companies to open the doors for all of their employees to gain further training, development, upskilling, and education that will help them in their careers and will help the company as well. And there's also a message even going wider for colleges and universities. What are we doing to truly prepare our grads for the workforce in every respect, all the way from the technical to just simply what it means to be responsible in a job? I mean, you talk to managers today, and they'll complain about some of the younger generations. They come in late, they leave early, they don't get all the work done, they feel very entitled. So it's really a multi-pronged focus that really is needed to make this happen, certainly with more highly skilled immigrants. But what are we doing as employers and as educators to upskill the American citizens who participate as well?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that really is something that it's absolutely critical that employers be looking for ways that have long-standing solutions. And even with a flow of immigrant talent, it's not a substitute for local talent. It's the combination that creates the magic. In order to attract, retain, and really be able to make a success of the talent core, it's got to be all of it. I would simply say that I think maybe Ed was hitting on something which wouldn't necessarily be one for one, but you look at some of these incoming immigrants with their esprit de corps, their desire to, you don't make a move to the United States without trying to make a success of it. They might be contagious to others in terms of that, helping to develop the internal inspiration for the workforce to then receive what employers throw out. But I think it is an absolutely critical time where the business community needs to focus on how to develop their many generations of talent.
So a lot of the issue is fear of the unknown, it probably goes both ways, I would think, but the political environment whips up fear without providing a lot of information. It's just it's crazy how that can be effective, but it is.
I think there might be a very significant fear factor we've seen across developed economies, not just in the United States, across developed economies, as there have been several waves of immigrant entries, both legal and illegal, refugee movements. Just the diaspora is changing so much. identities are being lost, and these identity politics that we talk about have started to affect people in terms of, well, how do I retain my identity with everyone else coming in and taking over and changing my society? But those concerns are very different than enriching an enterprise where you're really, no matter how much you open the door on highly skilled immigration, I just don't see corporate enterprise not still having much more than the majority is still going to be locally based. It's just a function of geography. It's the reality of who graduates from those universities and has the connections and how the job recruitment side works. So I think sometimes there's not only fear, but confusion of the issues. Slowing down what happens in terms of the mass volumes of entrants is very different than allowing employers to have an agile system for hiring top talent. They're just two different issues.
Ken?
Yes, it's very interesting. And the idea also would be from the organizational side to do all that we can to create a culture of education, of growth, and development. That's what we are as an organization. So when you come to work with us, those opportunities are going to be there. And if it's the type of situation that you'd like to seize, we have it. And then you go back to what Liz was saying about recruiting and screening and trying to find individuals who really bring that desire to learn and grow into the organization. We'll provide the track, the support, the pathway for you to go. But let's see if we can hire employees who bring that same mindset in and be known in the industry. This is an organization that really supports and believes in employee development. The culture is all for growth, and you can see it. You see it in the programs they offer and the financial and other support that they provide to employees to continue to learn and grow. Critical for success, individual and organizational today.
Oh, Liz, thanks very much for your time, and you're just so bright and so articulate about a difficult topic that it's soothing. And like, I'm not a techie, but I've been reading up on things, and I realize that I don't know much more than I thought I didn't know. Like an exponential pile of stuff that I don't know anything about.
That's funny. We think that the more years that go by, somehow we'll know more, and you only become more cognizant of how much we don't know,
Yeah. So I want to invite you to come back on Global TV and take us down the next chapter as soon as possible. So we keep the continuum going.
I would be delighted. I would be delighted to do it with Ken again. I found that really enjoyable.
Oh, that's great. And
Right back to you, Liz.
yeah.
Your comments were so enlightening and helpful. Just thank you so much. Just very, very interesting.
Oh, my
Right.
pleasure.
Okay, so I'll be in touch. I've got some other ideas. We are going back into London with the bank, but no date yet. We're looking at April, but it's not final yet.
Please
Yeah,
definitely let us know that. Yes.
yeah, and the New York branch of the bank has also invited me to come in to their swank offices in Hudson Yards, but again, no date. If so, there's negotiations going on, and it could turn out to be sometime towards the end of April. I do New York. Go from here in California to New York, do that, get on a plane and go to London and do that, and then come back. But
Of course. Of course. That's
it's
wonderful.
exciting. Yeah. Okay. Um, to what extent are you and the firm, if you could speak to that, and if not, I'll understand, involved in Latin America and Miami as a base?
No, we don't have a Miami office. We do have an office, several offices in Brazil, and are very involved in Latin America because our geopolitical reach, of course, is
Yeah.
absolutely critical. But we are not, to date, we have not opened offices in South Florida. Preferring really to work out of Washington and New York and some of our other offices in order to manage, including, of course, Brazil, in Latin America. But the events are of absolutely critical impact because everything is globally interdependent. And so there is no question that we, in particular in this Washington, D.C. office, it's just very difficult not to work without all the different pieces coming together.
Yeah. One last thing, if I may, and you can redirect me if I'm off base here. Dealing with Mexico as an entity. I mean, it's huge. It's the U.S.'s #1 trading partner now, even bigger than China, which is
How
really
fascinating the
that
developments of the
that's
past
amazing.
weekend, yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. And as an indication of the intelligence level, just look at the new president and what
It's
a
fascinating,
a
absolutely
brilliant
fascinating.
management of this situation that erupted,
Yeah.
and handling it adeptly. It's just I was really impressed
I
and
think
confident.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I look forward to doing more. We've already done 11 broadcasts featuring Latin America as a
How
global
interesting.
business. And so number 12 is coming up in February. Perhaps you'll take a role in that when I figure out what date it will be. And
Bueno,
so
sí
that's great.
hablo español, Ed, so.
Yeah, so your background is perfect. Mine is zip. I'm just a happy TV talk show host. Ken, are you multilingual?
Oh, well, it's interesting. In high school, I don't know why I took French. So je parle
Yeah, well, me
français,
too.
and I met some very nice people in the company where I used to work that spoke French, and I would do that. My Spanish, poquito, I'm learning and kind of teaching myself. So bits and pieces, I would communicate with employees who spoke Spanish at the workplace as well. And they loved it, and they thought I was doing well, but no, just French and English. That's really it.
Well, I took French
Liz, you
too, but it
speak
didn't matter.
Spanish? And what else do you speak, Liz?
I actually speak un petit peu de français, so
Ah,
I
très bien, très
I
bien.
took 9 years of French, so I just need to spend a few months in Paris to
Oh, I
Yeah.
think we all do. Yeah. I want to go back and
Yeah.
go into Notre Dame. I understand it's
Yes, that would
beautiful.
be lovely.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's make a plan to meet there.
I love
Rendezvous, Notre Dame.
that.
So thanks very much again. I really love what you're doing.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Have a
Thank you.
great
We'll be
week.
back,
Be
and
well all.
we'll send you a copy of this program later today.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
Liz. Bye, and thank you
Thank you.
again.